Hello. You'll have to excuse me today because my voice has been lost completely like this whole week and I'm just starting to get it back, so I sound like I've been smoking too many cigarettes, but I haven't. So I wanted to do a video about having a late diagnosis because I haven't made a video about this, and I don't know why I haven't made a video about this because like it's really important. So like I'm just gonna ramble on about that. So I was diagnosed when I was 22, and prior to that I had no idea what Aspergers was. I didn't know what autism was. I thought autism was like Down syndrome. I didn't have a clue. And yeah, I mean, I just thought that I was just prone to being depressed all the time and anxious, and I didn't fit in, and maybe like I was from another planet or something. You know, like it occurred to me that maybe there was something underlying, but I didn't know what, and yeah, like it was just really horrible. And then my mum started working at the Sheffield Adult Autism and Neurodevelopmental Service in Sheffield, and she brought back loads of books about autism and Asperger's one day, and she put them down in front of me and she said, "I want you to read them because I think that you've got that." And I was just like, what? Like autism? Like I thought that was kind of like a really scary kind of condition, and you know, it was like you're doomed if you're autistic. Like I didn't have anything against autistic people, it was literally just no understanding whatsoever, no knowledge of it whatsoever. So I was just like, really, do you know what I mean? But then I started reading the books that she'd given me and I was like, oh my god, this is me. And it explained everything that had gone wrong in the last 22 years. Like it was really surreal. And the only kind of feeling I can compare it to is when I watched Earthlings, which is a documentary about how we exploit and abuse animals for food, pets, clothing, entertainment, everything basically. And I was really emotional about it, and I was just like, I felt like I was having an epiphany, if you know what I mean. It was a really powerful feeling. So I was like, yeah, let's go to the doctors. We had to write a letter to the GP explaining why I needed to be referred to a specialist, and that took ages, like it took a few months. And then I finally got my diagnosis when I think it was November 2000 and well, whatever year it was when I was 22 anyway. I can't count. So yeah, like up till that point life was excruciatingly confusing, and I was going from job to job and having time off for depression. You know, I was forcing myself, like shoehorning myself into this way of life that everybody else around me was doing, and I just couldn't do it, and it was really grinding me down. But you know, I thought that there was just something really wrong with me. Like, why can't I do things the same way as other people? You know, why do I feel exhausted after like a day at work, when, you know, I mean, everybody gets tired after a day of work, but like really just like unable to speak to anybody and grouchy, and yeah, like it was just really horrible. And you know, balancing a job with having a social life, with having a relationship, with having a family life, with having time to myself, and it was impossible. I couldn't do it. It was one or the other. Like it was really that bad. And yeah, I mean, I was just struggling with it that much that I spent a lot of my time growing up very depressed and on medication, and you know, like self-harming, and you know, really just ending up in A&E and stuff like that. And like looking back, it just seems like that was a different person. because now, I mean, I do feel limited in the sense that, you know, I've got to make sure that finding a job, I can't just find any old job. I've got to think about the environment where, you know, the actual workplace, whether or not I can hack the workplace, because in offices and stuff like that, the lights are too bright for me and it makes me feel sick and it makes me feel dizzy and anxious and like, you know, I want to scream. Like, it's really invasive, and noises as well. And yeah, just like the whole atmosphere, how busy it is, you know, what people are like on the break. Do you have to socialise with people on the break? Because that is a no-no for me. Even though in my last job we didn't get breaks, but I didn't really care because I was working one-on-one with a lady with learning difficulties and I absolutely loved my job. So yeah, like I've got to think of everything, and I've got to have reduced hours as well. I can't work full time, because every job that I've ever had that I've worked full time, like it's just ended up me having to leave because I'm really stressed out and I'm exhausted all the time and I can't perform to the best of my ability, and you know, my mental health just deteriorates, and I can't get on with stuff like, you know, washing and ironing and cleaning, and you know, I neglect myself in that way. Sometimes even like I neglect myself in, I know it sounds horrible, but like, you know, washing and stuff like that, and remembering to put deodorant on, and you know, looking after my appearance, and you know, wearing a bit of makeup and doing my hair and stuff like that, and making sure all my clothes are clean. Like, if I'm working full time and I've got to keep up with everything else as well, like, well, I can't do it. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's too much for me. So when I work part-time, and I'm looking for about 25 hours down here now, hopefully doing the same job as I was in Sheffield, which is looking after people with learning difficulties, or something on the lines of that anyway, because I love that and I know that I'm good at it and I can get on with it. But yeah, 25 hours for me, it's like 3 to 4 days a week, depending how long the shifts are. So I'll have a day or two in the week or whatever, like how the shifts fall, because sometimes you have to work weekends and stuff when you're a support worker. Just to do my daily things that I need to do, and just have some time to myself and just, you know, get everything sorted. So that is really important to me. But yeah, before that, sorry, waffling on as usual. Before that, I was just trying to be normal. Like, you must be normal. You must work full time in any old job you can get. You must make enough money. You must make sure all your washing's done. You make sure that and I was really just at my wit's end with it. And because everybody else around me didn't know that I was autistic, it felt like everybody was having a go at me and I can't do anything right and I'm stupid in that, which was horrible, because like when I was a kid and growing up in that, I used to get called stupid and stuff all the time, for similar reasons. So like I've mentioned it in another video, but like if you get called something over and over again, you just start to believe it and you feel really shit about yourself, really low self-esteem, and you just think, well, what's the point, because I can't do anything right. So yeah, I mean, if I was, sorry, it's really hard to hold this camera and my webcam, I don't know like what microphone to get for my webcam, and what you do with it and how you work it. So if anybody knows anything about microphones for hooking it up to your webcam or whatever, please let me know, because I would like to do my videos on my webcam, but you can't hear anything that I'm saying because it's so quiet. So yeah, that's why I'm holding my phone up like this. So yeah, like because I didn't get a diagnosis earlier on in life as well, it really affected my education. And I did really well at GCSE level, even though I didn't turn up for half of my lessons during coming to the end of school, because I absolutely hated it. It was like unbearable, as you can imagine. And at A level I did alright, but I really struggled through it all. I didn't have any adjustments or anything, any support, any help. I was doing it all full time, and I was having a lot of problems alongside that as well, which now we know are Aspergers related, or most of it was anyway. So, but when I went to university, I had to drop out after a year because I just could not handle it all. And there's a big pressure on for university students to, socialise and get drunk all the time and stuff like that. And I ended up getting into drugs pretty bad, and I just lost sense of reality, and I fell into this really deep, dark depression abyss thing. And it was bloody horrible. And then I started working in call centres full time till 8 o'clock at night afterwards. So it was like never ending. Like, why do I keep getting everything wrong? Why do I have to quit everything? So early diagnosis is so important. It will save people from having a lot of the problems that I've had growing up. A lot of the problems. And, things are getting better, but I think we need to recognise, especially in women as well, or girls, autism is a very real thing, and Asperger's is a very real thing in females. And I think the ratio is now something like 3-1. And studies and stuff, they're saying, well, that's the number of females with Asperger's. It's 3 males to 1 female. And I don't think that's true. I just think that because it's so hard to detect in females, that is why the number of females with Asperger's and autism is so low compared to men. Just because they're not getting diagnosed doesn't mean to say that they're not autistic. Do you know what I mean? We know that from first-hand experience. So, yeah. And that's part of the reason why I do these videos, because if somebody suspects their child to have Asperger's, and they're searching on YouTube and stuff like that, to kind of learn more about it and whatever, like maybe they'll think, well, maybe it's a good idea if I get a referral from a doctor and actually go and speak to somebody about my child, because then it nips it in the bud while they're still young. Well, it doesn't nip it in the bud because they're going to have Asperger's and autism for the rest of their life, but we can help. It helps to work around that, and then they have access to more services and support, and especially in education and stuff like that, because that is absolutely really important. So yeah, and I think another problem is funding, because when I went to the doctors with my really long letter about why me and my mum think I've got Asperger's, it was just like, no, it's definitely not Asperger's, because you've got friends and, and I was just like, really? Do you know what I mean? Like, I am suffering here. I am really on my arse. I've been in and out of A&E. I've been, with crisis team and everything. And I've just spent ages explaining to you why I think I've got this and why I want to go and at least have it ruled out if I haven't got it. And you're just like, nah. And I think a lot of it is funding, and I'm not saying that GPs can't be arsed and stuff like that, because I think they can, but part of the job is to make sure that we're not like overpopulating or whatever these waiting lists, these really long waiting lists, because then that creates more you know, it costs more for the NHS. And not everybody can afford to get private referrals and that, like we couldn't. I come from a working class family. We couldn't afford hundreds of pounds worth of diagnosis. So, you know, but still, in the UK, and probably everywhere else, mental health is not seen as important as physical health, which is really, really sad, because people die from mental illness. A lot of people die from mental illness, and a lot of people are limited by mental conditions, and that can be prevented. So yeah, that's another reason why people from my age group anyway, a lot of them didn't get a diagnosis till later on. I would highly recommend, if you think that you have Aspergers or autism, to contact your GP as soon as you can and see if they can refer you to a specialist or what services are in your area. Because, you know, people think like, oh, you know, you just want a diagnosis because you want to put a label to it. Like, that is the most boring, generic comment ever, and I have got that a lot. That's not the reason why people get diagnoses, whatever the plural is for it. That's not the reason for getting a diagnosis. The reason for getting a diagnosis is so that you've got that piece of paper that then says to, you know, a potential employer, I need to work on reduced hours, or I need to do the same shifts every week, or, you know, I need private break times, or, you know, I need the lighting adjusting in my office or whatever. And then you can get things like PIP, which I didn't know anything about until a few years ago. And then, you know, I have that now after a couple of times of appealing it, and, you know, that was when I had a support worker, because I couldn't do anything for myself. That was rock bottom, that was. So yeah, like, you know, got PIP, and it's not much, but it makes all the difference. That's not means tested as well, so it doesn't matter if you're working or not. You still get that. So if you're working part-time, then, you know, that helps a bit, because you're on reduced hours, you're earning less money, you still want to work, and you still are working, and you're trying your best, but then that gives you an extra, you know. And if you can't work, if you're having one of them times where you're just completely on your arse, for use of a better phrase, you know, like really depressed and stuff like that, and you're not very well, and then you can use that to kind of just tide you through until you get yourself better again. And, you know, it's like a contingency fund, if anything. And, you know, the amount of times that I've had to get taxis places because I've had a meltdown in public, and, you know, I can't get on the bus because I'm really worked up and stuff. It helps with stuff like that. Yeah, it's just, without the diagnosis, people wouldn't get that, and people wouldn't get that help that they need, and they wouldn't have access to support groups and all that kind of stuff. And as well, which is one of the most important benefits to getting a diagnosis, is understanding the way that your brain works, and helping other people to understand how your brain works. Because, you know, without that understanding, you can't really get that far. You know, in my experience, before I got diagnosed, obviously I was just living life through a daze. I was just waking up thinking, why have I woken up? You know, what's the point in waking up? I wish I'd not woke up. Wish I'd never been born. And I didn't see my worth and my purpose in life, and I didn't see anything good about myself. It was horrible. And I wasted all those years feeling like that because I didn't know what was wrong with me. Well, that was what was wrong with me. There are some benefits to having Aspergers. Not a lot, in my opinion, but yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, I think having a late diagnosis is extremely damaging. I imagine it is for people with other conditions as well. You know, this doesn't necessarily all apply to Asperger's and autism, but yeah, that is my experience of it. That's my opinion on it. So yeah, if you think that you've got Asperger's and autism, or you think your child has, or somebody in your family has, or a friend has, I would have that conversation with them if they're old enough to understand or whatever. Or have a conversation with your doctor about it and see what they say, because it really does help people. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.